Yes. We're going to have the opportunity today of talking to, first of all, great friends, amazing entrepreneurs and innovators who've built an incredible product. And the idea of today is that you're going to tell us your honest story, uncut. It's what it is. It's how you feel about it. So before we begin, let us know a little bit about yourselves. Who are you? What happened? How did you meet?
Should I start?
Go ahead.
Okay. So we actually met we were both speakers giving a talk in Moscow on this topic of makerspace. And then we kept on being friends. And then when I started working at Telefonica at their special kind of research unit, I had this opportunity to bring him on board. And so this is kind of the moment where we decided, we've started to work on this topic of like far future, forecasting, futuring. And also had the opportunity to work with Google X together with Telefonica, which built this unit called Alpha. And when they decided to shut down, we said, let's start something on our own.
Okay. For everybody, this is Cecilia. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Myself, sure. So I have been living in Barcelona for 25 years. Before that, I was in the US. I studied biology, thinking that I was going to be a doctor. That didn't happen. Then I pivoted and I decided I'm going to go to Harvard and study architecture, and which is what I did. Wow. And then I moved to Barcelona and started becoming an entrepreneur. So there's a little bit of a kind of a three-prong where, I was...
But you're like too fast, people. I mean, this is a Harvard grad, work at the moonshot factory of Barcelona, Spain, in this case was Telefonica Alpha, collaborated with Google X. You've also been in the Singularity University.
That is correct.
You have a few startups and companies on your belt. You were the behind mob with the makers of Barcelona. Don't understand yourself. You're freaking awesome. So for most people, and you also have this school, right, for women.
Yeah, I started a school called All Women, and because we have noticed that there's a lack of women in tech, especially tech leadership. Yeah. And so we started a school in 2018.
Very good. And then you had the luxury or the luck of meeting this guy, or maybe you had the luck. And
I had this was all mine. Yeah,
exactly.
Mark, I still think, yeah. So as CC mentioned, we met in Moscow in 2016. I started working together at Alpha in 2018. So before that, I started coding in 1977.
Oh, my friend.
Yes, as a child, yes. So my dad worked at Xerox, and we brought computers home, and so I had a $40,000 computer to work on when I was a teenager. Yeah, exactly. But also what happened when, Xerox basically lost the whole computer revolution to Apple and IBM, and that kind of stuck with me. And I see that over and over again. That was kind of the problem I've always wanted to solve in my career, is how do big companies just fumble the future? There's a book about Xerox called Fumble the Future. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so I started out at Accenture right out of school. That brought me to Sweden. In Sweden, this was in the 90s, and the dot-com boom was happening, and the Accenture partners just didn't get it. Mm-hmm. One of them said, the internet has so far earned $0 trillion, and I knew then they were out of touch. Yeah. And so I and a couple other guys from Accenture went to a really early startup called Icon, and this was like one of the iconic companies of the time. So I saw this, we started out working in a warehouse, and by the rode that whole dot-com boom, and that sent me to California. So I moved to Silicon Valley in 97. Okay. I was ran the US part of the company then, and loved that startup vibe. Then I had kids, and also the dot-com crash happened, and I wanted to, so I needed more stability. I worked at Forrester as an analyst for a number of years. And that whole process of going from Accenture to a startup to an analyst firm kind of taught me the balance between research and consulting, and how to basically make money on both. So between then and now, I've worked with most of the companies like Alpha, like Xerox PARC, like Airbus A-Cubed, and so on. And that problem of innovation has really stuck with me. So between then, I was the VP of research for Lux Research, which is basically Lux Capital's deep tech technical due diligence team. And we grew that company from, just a couple guys in a conference room to about 150 people. Wow. Sold that company in 2017. And so when we did that, I knew I had maybe one more startup in me. And so I started looking for a co-founder or another team to join and kind of do the last thing. And that's when CC and I started working together. And so at Alpha, we were there for a number of years. And that same problem that always happens with these corporate innovation labs happened. It's like, you've got 2 down quarters. What's the first thing to get cut? It's innovation.
Yeah.
And so having seen this problem, like literally from my childhood to my last actual job, I knew that the problem is that it takes too long.
Yeah.
By you start, you got a burning problem, and 2 years later you have a solution, but the market has already solved that. Somebody else has already beat you to it. So that's why we started fast. Basically compress that innovation cycle into months or weeks instead of years.
Between the two of you, you have like half of Fortune 500 companies interacted with you one way or another. You've been building moonshots, you've done the startup thing, and you found a real problem. I couldn't agree more. I think you guys are shortening the innovation funnel big time. This is why you're fast, right? This is why you do what you do. Tell us a little bit about why is that a problem, especially in the times we live right now. And I'm going to say this very boldly, but I think that every company needs fast. If they don't have fast, they're dead. And I mean literally and metaphorically. Elaborate a little bit on that.
I can start. I think one of the fundamental problems that we have noticed when we were at Telefonica, and you have noticed working with other companies, is that there's a lot of information. There's a lot of information in the pipeline of working on innovation, right? And it is always really, really hard for a human. This is one of the issues with consultancies, to absorb all of that information. So what if all of those things is in your hand? What if you can compress them? What if you can see those insights faster, more reliable, and at scale?
But it's a little bit more than seeing the issue, right? It's not about that. It's really getting to see the innovation. I think you mentioned in a time where there's a big difference between being able to do a prediction and having an invention. Can you break that down for everybody? Because most people don't really understand the difference. And a lot of people are caught up with the idea. It's like, I had this great idea. That doesn't mean anything. Especially in these times.
I say thinking big is still just thinking. You have to do, right? And so as CC said, we met at this conference of makers. So makers and maker spaces, were a big thing in the earlier in the 2000s and 2010s. And it was this idea that anybody can make anything. And so we learned all these skills, not just of engineering, but of making of things, of manufacturing. And so we know how to make a lot of things. It could be code, it could be food, it could be whatever. And what's frustrating looking at how companies do this is because they're so siloed, the handoffs between specialists in IP or in engineering or in marketing, that's actually a huge use of unutilized time. So if you look at how people actually come up with ideas, essentially what we've done with FAST, well, let me go back to what CC was saying about just seeing the future. So we have in the innovation funnel, people will start out with an empty funnel and they'll go look for stuff and start to fill that funnel and then sort of migrate things over time. What we've done is just captured everything, every patent, every scientific.
Let me capture everything, like what Google's doing, downloading the entire internet.
Basically, download just the innovation part of the internet.
Jesus Christ. So, you understand how big that is? It's just like, okay, you're like the Google of innovation.
I think, and maybe so Google, if that's the store of data, what can you do with that? So look at how, Midjourney and Sora and Nano Banana have taken all these images and they can create new images that nobody's ever seen before. And that are totally new. And we do that with technical, social, and other types of innovations.
Pause. Camera just somehow. Pause. So
how do you know that?
I had to go click.
Oh, I didn't hear anything. I'm terrible at this.
You're great at this, and you're terrible at self-awareness because you have no idea that you're the genius in the room all the time. Shut up. It's true. See, she's making those faces are going to be in this uncut video.
By the way, I just thought we can reprint this.
We can read it.
Capturing this, by the way.
Okay.
See, she's making those faces are going to be in this uncut video.
By the way, I just thought we can reprint this.
Yeah, we exactly.
Capturing this, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is funny. Okay, let's go back to that.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
Oh, oops. So essentially, I'm going to go back to the theatrical. So essentially, what you're saying is that you were like Google of innovation. You're downloading everything innovation related, and you model it.
Exactly. So, everyone's sort of in thrall of large language models right now. It's almost synonymous with AI. When people talk about AI, they mean large language models. But language is a really limited way to reason about things. It's got a lot of potential, obviously, but there's a new company out that just got, I think, 225 million in funding at a some billion valuation, called Fundamental, and they do a large tabular model. So they're doing for spreadsheets, which is actually how most decisions get made, instead of just language. There's a new form of data science called graph data science, and what we've done is what we're building is a large graph model. So there are all these examples that you're starting to hear, even like the Epstein files, where they're like connecting all these dots. If you had that in tabular data, you would never get through it.
Yeah.
But because you can say this person talked with this person and this person talked with that person, you can now connect these people.
Yeah.
And if you have, in our case, 300 million nodes of things like that, if you want to traverse those connections, you need a new type of data.
Right.
So that's what we've built. And that's what we're building even better. We're in the Barcelona Supercomputing Center, AI Factory.
Wait. This is way too good, guys.
Okay. Okay.
Because you mentioned something earlier, and I think for people it's really important to understand that. You mentioned Nano Banana, right? So you basically, and this is my field, computer vision. So I know that you needed to have a lot of images, and we do analysis pixel by pixel, and we create maps of those images in order to build something new that resonates with humans.
Yeah.
In your case, you're taking innovation, and what do you do exactly with that innovation that you are able to model it?
So first you need to understand, just like statistically, like where are the, for example, where is there a cluster of innovation happening? It could be geographic, it could be in a patent space, it could be in scientific research. And you see these bursts where, like, RNAi or CRISPR in biology, or LLMs in AI. That was, a new thing that kind of burst onto the scene. And these things have a cycle. So by looking at all of them, literally going back thousands of years in human innovation and being able to project forward a little bit, we can understand what the topology of innovation looks like. So we know where those hotspots are, and also we can see them forming. So when we look at that, we can say, okay,
you draw them, you draw those hotspots. Literally, that's why it's a graph.
Yeah, it's so the graph, like you see, here's a whole wad of stuff like that is different from something that's very sparse. But we also know by studying all these how they evolve.
Right.
So think of like first day of school, a new class, nobody knows anybody.
Yeah.
Pretty soon you have clicks forming, you have like the most popular kid, and by the end of the year, everybody's connected in some way. And that same type of evolution applies to companies and partnerships and acquisitions and things like that, patents and ideas. So by mapping all those layers of how innovation happens, we can actually make predictions that nobody else can make. It will never come out of
it's innovation, right?
Well, by making a prediction, you can say this space is going to evolve in this way, but you know how it's going to evolve, so you can start to take action.
Okay.
And so, we can get into the how do you invent?
Yeah.
Like that part is also exciting.
This is where my mind blows away when I hear you guys, because you are a company that actually allow a plant to communicate.
Yeah.
Tell us
that's a really good example of, so we saw two fields converging. On the one hand, you've got people looking at what's called rights of nature, as environmental things, basically giving non-human things legal standing. On the other hand, you've got AI, and AI applied to non-human communication. So we're learning about how bats talk with each other; they have names for each other. How plants communicate in a forest, and that field is basically showing that there's this whole society of communication going on. And if you combine those two, you say, how can we combine what's going on in the legal sphere with what's going on in the natural world and AI, and create basically the same way we created corporations, create a new type of organization that can do that.
So if this is something you're building, it's incredibly unique. Why companies need it? Why would they die a day don't have it?
Go ahead.
Like I said, I've seen so many of these. So when SpaceX started launching rockets that could land backwards, they cut the cost of launch dramatically.
Yeah.
And Airbus, the CEO of Airbus at the time, said, if anybody does to our commercial aircraft business what SpaceX is doing to our SpaceX our launch business, our rocket business, we're dead. So they started this group, A-Cube, that worked really closely with them to, as they said, disrupt Airbus before anybody else does. You see this right now in the automotive industry.
Yeah.
All the American and European car makers can't do EVs, and they can barely do. They're terrible.
Legacy kills them.
And so we're talking about on the level of national, industries collapsing, geopolitical, everything that's going on with between the West and China is really about this superiority that they've had, and that's been happening. You could see that 20 years ago. When I was at Forrester, I was an automotive analyst, and electric vehicles were coming out, or hybrids, and the Western automakers just like poo-pooed it. But you're like, no, this is from an engineering level, this is a better vehicle. It uses less parts and lots of other reasons. So they've had plenty of warning. And but again, because of the way the length of time it took them to catch up, they're not even caught up with China. They're just dead. They're just roadkill.
I would also add that a lot of people treat, being able to be resilient in the future as a luxury.
Yeah, agreed.
And things are happening faster and faster. Technology is being developed faster and faster. And by the time you see something that is already a technology that is already mature, and your company is just reacting to it, you're already too late.
Yeah.
You're already too late. And so being able to be prepared for the future, being able to be in the forefront of acting on and incorporating that into the strategy of the company, it's fundamental.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so this is why this is the core problem. Companies have to behave like companies.
Yeah.
Like they have shareholders, they have stock prices, they've got to worry about that or they won't survive. Until now, the innovation cycle has been longer than the business cycle.
Right.
That is the problem. If it takes you 5 or 10 years to do something, it will never survive. It won't clear the business cycle.
Yeah.
So you've got to compress the innovation cycle so it's shorter than the business cycle. That's what
shorter than a quarter. And you can do that.
Yeah, we can do shorter than a quarter for sure. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I think getting that part of companies' future out of their own way, so they won't stumble over their own feet. Like that's what we do.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, and you just need to be aware of what's going on. February 3rd, the stock market had one of those moments where you go, why are the stocks going down so fast? What is going on? Because there was no indication, there was no wars happening. There was not, Trump hadn't done anything wacky at the time. There was not an event that you would say this happened, right? And all of a sudden, a lot of companies, particularly consultancy companies or companies on the SaaS space, started to drop in price. What happened is that Claude Cowork came out into the market, and they demonstrated live how can they essentially replace a lot of number of jobs in the consultancy space, which are about getting the data, process the data, and making decisions with that data. That's the business of a lot of companies in the stock market at the moment. And we are seeing the beginning of an era where the stock market behaves in a way where companies are making more money than ever, but companies are also reducing in size, getting jobs out of the way, and a lot of people are worried about that. And not only that, I think what happens right now is that the stock market is brutal. They need liquidity. They liquidate their positions. Hold on. Even Bitcoin went down, which is amazing. Now there was this, for the first time, is now below the 100K. I think this morning was something like around 67 or 69K, which is unheard of by the times that we've been living on. There was not an event that would create that. So basically what you're saying is that's a future that's already happening. That's almost like there's nothing you can do about that. The car companies that are not adapting their cycle, not shrinking it fast enough, they're going to be dead. That's essentially what you're saying. What happens to everyone else? Because that's the companies. What do you guys think happens to everybody else? How is this new world going to be shaped like?
Yeah, so I was just in Pakistan this week, National AI Summit, setting the strategy for the country, and the concern about having anything in the cloud, especially if that cloud is owned by a Chinese or American company, is probably their number one concern. So everyone's trying to bring things in-house, on-premise, and so on. And so in our case, while obviously we do have a SaaS offering, we're also basically developing an on-premise version, something that you can say, we can send you the box. It's got all the data. It's got the ability to pull in the new things that happen every day and all the tools for going from that vast amount of data into insight and then to what you should build. All of those things can fit basically on one computer. The processing that we've done up to now has been for this, the entire history of innovation, but what happens every day doesn't actually is something you can fit, like I said, on an on-premise version.
Yeah, and I think this is inevitable. A lot of companies are going to die, but a lot of new companies and ideas will happen. So I think your product, it's interesting because it's not only affecting corporations, it touches VCs, it touches new startups, it touches a lot of different levels of innovation. And I don't know, I stress this a lot, particularly with my students, that thanks to the medium internet, we have now YouTubers, influencers. There's a new profession made out of the particular medium that was created at the time. AI is the same. AI ultimately is going to kill a lot of different things, but I want to see in the future more companies building plants that can talk to me, dogs that are, that I can actually communicate with. Or at the case of one of my students, he created an architect. Literally, you with a simple sketch, you will render the whole house with all the data that it has available to it, which means that bad news for some architects, bad news for developers as well, bad news for a lot of people. But that means that we are entering a completely new future. Being the company name Futurity, which by the way is a really cool name. What's the future?
The future of the company?
The future.
Oh, I can give you a concrete example.
The future of the company I can already tell you guys. No problem. Sure.
Something that have been on my mind. I came back from Paris while he was in Pakistan, and I was in an AI panel day. And I brought up this speculative future that we have projected actually when we were working at Telefonica, this new concept called autonomous commerce. So kind of an evolution from commerce to e-commerce, mobile commerce to autonomous commerce. And in this world, I talked a little bit about this new concept of what we're calling digital souls. And it's kind of an evolution of personal digital twins, and that taps a little bit on, because everyone knows B2B, B2C, all of these like very typical mechanisms of transactions, right? And I explain how the digital soul could, in this context of autonomous commerce, could have this new way of transaction called M2M, machine to machine economy. They didn't know how to react. They didn't know how to.
Yeah, of course.
And this is not even in the future. People are already talking about agentic commerce, which is kind of sort of what we were talking about
in 2018.
In 2018.
Yeah.
So, we're talking about new forms of transactions, new participants in our economy, new way of, how do you even, create advertisement for bots? You can't, so we're not prepared.
Yeah.
Companies aren't prepared.
Right. How do we prepare?
Using FAST.
Tell me. Of course, I want to learn.
Well, just to build on that example. So again, in 2018, we were looking at, Google Home and Alexa and stuff like that, where you say, hey, Alexa, tell me about vacation homes in Rome or something like that. And so you're sending all this data to somebody who has not your best interest in mind. So our idea at the time is what we called BotBot, which is what we now, so this is now what we're seeing these days, where you tell your Claude or your whatever to find something for you, and it goes out and does those things. Now, that's still not owned by you. But our idea at the time is that basically, that could fit on your phone, again, Telefonica. And we developed all these frameworks like, adversarial agentic interoperability. This is where the agents go and interface with other providers who want to grab your data, but they obfuscate your intention by permutating all the different things, buying a house in Rome, renting a house in Paris, and so on, and just bring back the answer that you want. Right. So that's now 8 years ago.
Right.
So
crazy.
So we knew that was in the market and technically would be really advantageous. And so we built a prototype of that. And going back to why is it so important to invent things? Because you won't know until you've tried it, right? And so the ability to rapidly prototype things, so have an idea, build it, and so on.
And that's what AI has democratized. Now you can prototype stuff really quickly. Now you have access to a lot of tools. So the cycle shortens in the prototyping bit, but also you bringing the ideation bit, and you have also the ability of actually projecting those futures. So we put it all together.
Exactly.
Done deal.
That was actually my TEDx talk.
Oh, really?
In 2013, the cycle of innovation has been tightened because the person who can think of the idea, the person who can prototype the idea, and the person that can use that and very quickly iterate, you shorten the cycle of innovation. And so companies need to be able to do this instead of waiting for years and years.
Do you think we're going to still have a future where we're going to need companies? Is that concept something that still makes sense, or would it disappear?
I think so. Also related to the plants with money. So company is a thing that we invented a few hundred years ago. It's a legal person. It's not a real person, right? And so I think the specific thing that made us connect these together is somebody said, well, in the future, we'll be able to, will AI have legal personhood? Can we tax it? This is regulators and lawyers thinking about this, obviously. Can we, punish it if it makes a mistake? And how will we treat these? Will it be, if a self-driving car crashes into somebody, does the owner pay? Does the car itself pay? Does the manufacturer pay? And somebody, again, a legal scholar, had this idea that, well, if you put an AI in charge of a company, you have created an AI that is a real legal person, but they can have, enter into contracts and has agency in the economy and so on. And so we extended that to say, well, what if natural resources had that? We're in charge of the AI that was in charge of the company. So I think companies, they're already the superhumans that live among us. We already have that sort of alien species that's more powerful than people and things like that. So I don't think that's going away anytime soon. But how those companies run with agents, you can spin up companies in seconds. You could have thousands of companies who are essentially franchises of the thing that you built. So we actually got e-citizenship in Estonia, and
I did too.
And our idea is to set up a company there that would essentially prototype that idea.
Wow, that's really great. So we're looking into a future where we're going to have an expansion of the economy, because we're going to have not only companies but AI companies expanding, and then we have people. Tell me the story. What's the story for us humans? The person in the store that is picking up bags, the taxi driver. What happens to all of these people? What do you guys think that's their future?
I might want to go back and ask another question.
Okay.
We talked a little bit about companies. What happened to companies? I want to, know what happened to money.
Okay.
Because if AI can make money, and they will make money much better than humans, what will be the purpose of money? So, and then if we operate as an economy with money, how is that going to affect humans, right? So I've been thinking about, what...
That brings us back to the concept of universal healthcare, universal...
Basic income.
Basic income, thank you. It brings us back to the idea of, if we don't actually work for money, but value is something is different. But it feels that we're so far from that. I mean, right now we're polarized in a global level on ideas of, you need to work hard to make a living, otherwise you're not worth it. And why would I, with my taxes, pay for you that not doing anything? And then we have this concept of socialism, communism, capitalism. Is there a new model that would come into place? Are you guys suggesting that?
Yeah. So the topic of post-capitalism and post-democracy has been brought up for a long time, mostly by people on the left who are hoping for some utopian thing, and also by, I'd say, people on the right who are hoping to go back to more like an authoritarian. And you look at some of the successful economies like Singapore, the UAE, China, they're not democratic, and they are, they're mercantilist. They have an adaptation of the economics. But I think what people are missing is that the third thing is actually much more powerful. It's just a little bit harder to understand. Right. So when we talk about digital goods, there's no fixed cost to those. And all of economics, macro and microeconomics, is built on the idea of fixed cost, variable cost, supply and demand. So if supply is effectively infinite, you can have as many copies as you want. It totally wrecks that model. So I don't think anybody has the answers yet, but I think what we'll see is a bunch of little sandboxes, prototypes. I mean, even like you mentioned, Bitcoin a little while ago. That's pretty big experiment that's going.
Yes, a human is pretty big. Yeah.
And so even just the proliferation of this coin and that coin, and those were also micro experiments within that ecosystem. But I think there'll be more things like that around the capitalist part. On the democratic part, I think what we're seeing is cities are becoming the nexus of power. They're diverging in a lot of ways from the cities have more in common with each other across countries than they do with their own rural country compatriots. So yeah, we're in for a wild ride, but those would be the two things that I see. It's like digital economics are really, really different from capital economics. Maybe you call it digitalism, not capitalism. But and then cities as these, again, growing nexus of power, they're setting, in the United States, they're setting their own policies that conflict with the federal government on things like immigration, same-sex marriage and things like that. So that is, I think, a future of a lot of experiments going on and really a departure from these monolithic groups. Yeah.
So speaking a little bit about the future, we could spend hours on this. I just want to get, because I find what you guys built so exciting and so interesting and why it's so needed, because it answers a lot of questions that we have had for many, many years. We see advances in medicine like never before. In the past year, there's been 3 separate announcements of researchers using AI to literally cure cancer. And there are some types of cancer who are already on human stages thanks to the advancement of technology. In the next 10 years, a lot of scientists are saying we're going to beat aging, which is incredible, which means we might live longer than we cope for. So there is no pension funds that suggest that. There's no economical scheme that suggests how we're going to sustain people that can live now 200, 300 years. There's no model for that. It doesn't exist, which brings us to the space where how does FAST help a company or a group of individuals understand how far can they go into the future?
I'll let you.
Sure.
I'll let you start.
So in all of these cases, like live forever, post-democracy, post-capitalism, all those things, we put those in what we call the imagination horizon.
Okay.
So if you think about crazy ideas that people have thought of, they have no concept of how it would ever be implemented in truth. They're still useful in a way as inspiration for science, social science and hard science, to then say, well, maybe we could build warp drive or a space elevator, or maybe we could live forever. And so scientists get those, let's say, those ideas looking at things that are just unmet needs, some of which we've had for centuries. The ability to fly was only for gods until 120 years ago or so. So those things kind of trickle in from the imagination horizon into the science horizon. Scientists work on it for a while. There's structures that we apply to the data to see, like in science, it's the Kuhn wrote this book, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, about how science goes from quantum physics was rejected by most of the people that believed in classical physics, and how that basically works its way into reality. Once it gets through science, then we start engineering it. Can we take that discovery that we know how to do once with a bunch of guys in lab coats and PhDs and do it at scale? Can we build that thing? Can we make it cost effective? Can we really turn it into something that becomes a cure for cancer or for every other disease? Once that's worked out, we say, well, can we market it? And so that's the business horizon. So in business, we're like, do we have the right channels? Do we have the right marketing? Who are the target markets and things like that? Each of these spheres is separate and all by itself. But what we've done is mapped all of that, even historically, so we can see how long does it take? And then there's culture when things go obsolete. So internal combustion engine vehicles are really close to that edge, right? EVs are getting better and better in performance. And so that will be, like horse and buggy at some point. Yeah. So when to get out of a market, there's a lot of business structure around this, like the Ansoff matrix and so on. How do you grow and when do you leave?
Wow.
Can I add to that?
Please.
So I think coming back to this idea that the reason why we gathered this entire span of innovation data is because we have identified that there are patterns and there are these clusters and there are these things that we can extract historically as a way for us to be able to predict and then use that prediction as a way for us to act on. And so I call that from deep research to deep imagination.
I love it. Yeah. I love the concept of deep imagination. I think you guys have built an amazing product, to be fair. You're raising money. And I think you're going to be very successful very quickly. You also have an event. You want to tell us a little bit about the event on the 26th?
Yeah. That's your baby.
Yeah, it's a baby with many parents, but yeah. So again, back to this idea, like most events, most conferences, you're like somebody's talking and everybody's listening, and just like your project with Accenture, you spend a bunch of time and all you get at the end is a bunch of slides.
Yep.
So we want to basically make this a working session where all the tracks and all the sessions are meant to lead to an outcome that's a project that people will pursue throughout the year.
Okay.
So we'll have quarterly meetings with all the participants afterwards. And the other big thing that we're trying to break, not just going to action, is interdisciplinary, inter-industry, and even inter-role types of interactions. So if you're in automotive, you go to an automotive conference, you probably know 80 or 90% of the stuff already. But if you take that same person who's working on innovation, you send them to a food conference, they will get ideas they've never thought of before. They'll see solutions they've never heard of before. And so what we want to find is basically, it's like focusing on unfocusing. It's what's in the white space between this industry and that industry.
Okay.
Because this is where we've seen the most disruptive innovations happen in the past. If you were Nokia or Kodak and this came along, that's two industries, phones and cameras, that never thought about each other. And all of a sudden they're in the same industry. Yeah. What Apple did with music and computing. So when those different, diverse groups get together, that's where we expect to see a lot of sparks. We've got some amazing people coming. Absolutely.
Is it still open? Can people just sign up, or is this is it by invitation only? How does it work?
Yeah, so it's invitation only. We don't want people pitching their company and talking, doing marketing and stuff like that. But if they're watching this video that you made, they're probably the right kind of people.
Okay, so, super good. All right, guys. Well, one last sentence you want to share with the folks listening to this. If you want to give them some hope about the future or an advice, what would it be?
I would say that never before have we had the tools, the data, the ability to build better futures. And so this is the right moment for us, all of us, to act on to build better futures for all.
Wow. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Awesome. That came out really, really good. Yay.
I kept looking at you.